First, the silver flow? Well, it worked. Perfectly. Chinese people were now buying opium with silver. Massive amounts of silver. The same silver that used to flow into China from British tea purchases, now flowing out of China to pay for opium. The trade deficit reversed. Britain wasn't losing money anymore. They were making a fortune. The East India Company's revenue from opium was so massive that it funded 15 to 20% of British India's entire colonial government budget. An entire colonial administration, roads, army, bureaucracy, everything, large part being funded by drug money. Britain had essentially become the world's largest drug cartel, and it was working exactly bad. Cost to China? Catastrophic. By the 1830s, it's estimated that around 2 million Chinese people were addicted to opium, and that number was growing exponentially. By mid-century, that figure would balloon to somewhere between 10 and 12 million people, maybe more. Some estimates suggest that by the late 1800s, up to 40% of Chinese men were users. It wasn't like China didn't see this coming. Chinese officials were sounding the alarm early on. They knew opium was destroying their people. They knew the silver drainage was wrecking their economy. They passed laws. They tried to crack down on smugglers. They even executed Chinese drug dealers. It didn't matter. Because the smuggling operation was too big, too organized, and too protected by British power. For every smuggler China caught, and more were waiting. For every opium den they shut down, more opened. The supply was endless because Britain was producing it on an industrial scale. China was being systematically poisoned, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. Yet. Hey, lovely people. Before we continue, if you're enjoying the video so far, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Audio Point. It helps more people discover these videos and keeps the conversation going. Now back to it. By the late 1830s, the opium crisis had reached a breaking point. Emperor was getting desperate reports from all over the country. Provinces losing tax revenue. Everyone was too addicted to work. Military units falling apart because soldiers were smoking opium instead of training. Entire communities collapsing into poverty. Something had to. Emperor knew he was special job. Someone incorruptible. Someone fearless. Someone who would actually get results. Enter Commissioner Lin Zexu. This guy was a legend in Chinese government circles. Lin Zexu was a scholar official who had built his entire reputation on being brutally honest and completely uncorruptible, which, in any government, makes you kind of a unicorn. He'd served in various provinces, had a track record of actually solving problems, instead of just shuffling paperwork. When the opium crisis somewhat backbone, Emperor picked Lin. In December 1838, Lin Zexu was Imperial Commissioner and the opium. Not reduce it, not regulate it, end it. Lin didn't mess around. He arrived to Canton March 1839 and immediately started investigating the entire operation. Who was smuggling? Who was selling? Who was protecting the smugglers? He cracked down on Chinese dealers first, shutting down opium dens and just treating the symptoms. The real problem was the supply. flooded to China. All of it confiscated. Lin Zexu had to figure out what to do with over 1,000 tons of opium. He couldn't just store it. Someone would steal it. He couldn't sell it. That would make him a hypocrite. There was only one option: destroy it. So in June 1839, at Human Beach, Canton, workers dug huge trenches, filled them with water, salt and lime, and then dumped all 20,000 chests of opium into the mixture. The chemical reaction broke down the opium and sludge, which was then flushed out into the ocean sky. This wasn't done in secret. Lin made sure it was a public spectacle. He invited officials, locals, even some foreign observers. He wanted everyone to be serious. Poison would not be tolerated. The destruction took 23 days. 3 weeks of continuous work, breaking down chest after chest, watching a fortune literally dissolve into the... From Lin, this was a victory. He'd cut off the supply. He'd sent a message that China wouldn't... And he'd protected his people. From Britain's perspective, Lin Zexu had just destroyed British property worth millions of pounds. More importantly, he threatened the entire economic system that Britain had built around the opium trade. Charles Elliot immediately sent word back to London. China has seized and destroyed British property, detained British subjects, violated the principles of free trade. He framed it not as an individual action, but as an act of aggression against Britain. The thing is, Lin Zexu wanted to use it to respond to Britain. He wasn't ready. But I think he genuinely believed that if China stood down, with strength and moral clarity, Britain would eventually fall down. Because the alternative, that Britain would actually go to war and bring was empire. But this directly was happening money, and he underestimated how far Britain would go to protect their property. So, how did Britain respond to it? By voting and trying to protect its own people. They sent warships. Yeah, Britain literally went to war because China wouldn't let them sell drugs. Let that sink in for a second. A sovereign nation defended itself against drug trafficking, and the response was military aid. Obviously, Britain didn't call this the Opium War, at least not officially at first. That would have sounded bad. Can you imagine the headline? Britain declares war to protect drug trade? Not a good look. Instead, they framed it completely differently. This was about free trade. This was about protecting British interests. This was about defending British honor and the principle of commerce. British politicians, stuck in Parliament, gave these passionate speeches about how China had violated the sacred principles of national trade, how they'd seized British property without compensation, how they'd threatened British subjects. Notice what we from that narrative? The opium, addiction, the millions of Chinese lives being destroyed. None of that made it into the officials. William Gladstone, later become Prime Minister, actually stood up in Parliament in 1840 and called this out. He said, I'm paraphrasing, but the essence was, a war unjust in its origin, a war more calculated to cover this country with disgrace. I do. He saw right through. He knew this was about defending a drug trade, and he said it was disgraceful. Because the people making opium war just saw an opportunity to get in on the action, to carve out their own privileges, influence China, while Britain was doing the heavy lifting. So now it's Britain and France versus China. And once again, it's not even close to a fair fight. The Second Opium War kicked off in 1856, and it followed a familiar pattern. British and French forces attacked Chinese coastal positions, blockaded ports, and slowly worked their way up toward Beijing. Chinese forces tried to resist, but the technological gap hadn't closed. If anything, it had widened. By 1858, Allied forces had pushed far enough that China was forced to negotiate. The result was the Treaty of Tientsin, signed in June 1858. This treaty made the Treaty of Nanking look almost generous by comparison. China had to open 10 more ports to trade, not just coastal ports, but inland ones too, which meant foreign powers could now penetrate deep into territory. They had to allow foreign diplomats to reside in Beijing, which was a huge symbolic blow. Beijing was the imperial capital, the heart of Chinese, and now foreigners would be living there permanently. They had to allow Christian missionaries to travel and preach anywhere in China, which undermined traditional Chinese religious and social structures. And they had to legalize the opium trade. Fully. Officially. No more gray area. Opium was now a legal commodity in China. China tried one last act of resistance. They signed the treaty under duress, but when it came time to ratify it the following year, it refused. Said, no, actually, I'm not doing it. Britain, France's response? Oh, you want to do this the hard way? Fine. In 1860, British and French forces launched a final devastation campaign. They marched straight up to Beijing, crushing any resistance along the way. In October 1860, they reached the outskirts of the capital. Just outside Beijing, a place called government's revenue collapsed, and a government with no money can't maintain order, can't fund its military, and provide services. The Qing dynasty was essentially bankrupt. It gets even worse. Other countries saw how vulnerable China had been. They decided to get their piece too. After the Opium War, it's like blood in the water. Every major power wanted to enforce their own unequal treaty on China, carve out their own sphere of influence, make their own concessions. Russia pressured China, giving up huge territory north and west. It's still part of Russia today. Germany demanded control over Shandong province. France took influence over southern China, conventional bombs not easily penetrate. The hidden card Iran holds, and its adversary know. $15 billion U.S. aircraft carrier, overwhelmed by all speedboat, only this is the swarm tactic of the Army practiced for decades, attacking simultaneously in all directions, overwhelming. In the narrow waters of the Hormuz, traditional technological into the strait where no human Iran could deploy thousands of hours. Single mine can tear open the hull of and once a few ships are damaged, the entire route can be shut down, not by force but by fear. It is one of the most effective psychological weapons in Hormuz. In response, the United States Navy constant Fifth Fleet based in rain, cold 24/7, ships, radar, and satellite tracking everything. It is a never-ending and both sides know it is triggered. What sounds like a hypothesis has already happened. 2019, several oil rigs attacked, all breached oil prices spiked and global financial markets. Just without full-scale wars were enough to trigger worldwide economic. red soil, rich in iron oxide and minerals, known as gamak, mixed in and used or even eaten. It is not poverty, but a unique culinary tradition connected to islands and unusual geology. Every morning, fishermen set out to sea in small wooden boats, following traditions passed down for centuries. And every morning, they share the water with steel giants, carrying oil for the global economy. Two worlds could not be, yet they coexist in a narrow stretch of water. Bandar Abbas, 500,000 shore. This is Hormuz. Its port is a trade gateway, where goods from around the world are refined and Iranian oil flows out. For the people here, geopolitics is not abstract. It is their jobs and income. As the sun sets behind anchored oil tanks, Hormuz breathtaking beauty, red, orange, and purple blending across the calm sea. It is a moment of grandeur and agility. Pure beauty of nature, and beneath it, ever-present tension of geopolitics. Arabia and UAE have built pipelines across the used to be. But their total capacity only handles about 20% required oil flow. Remaining 80% has no routes. And building more pipelines, it would cost hundreds of billions of dollars in decades and face nearly insurmountable challenges. In theory, tankers veer out around the Cape of Good Hope, but that would add thousands of nautical miles, weeks of travel, dramatically higher costs. Oil prices would rise tenfold, and the world would be twice as big. It is not impossible, but too expensive. Transitioning toward renewable energy, but far more slowly than most suggest. Oil will still dominate global energy. During this transition, Hormuz tendency does not disappear overnight, fades gradually in decades. Experts have modeled a scenario Hormuz is closed in 48 hours. Within the first 6 hours, global financial markets tremble. By hour 24, oil prices dollars. By 48 hours, some Asian government. No war is sure. Globalization has unprecedented prosperity, but it has also over. Hormuz, a $100 trillion global economy, narrow 30 water. That is not strength, it is fragility. Every oil tank passes safely through Hormuz is the result of a delicate balance. Iran and Saudi Arabia and its neighbors in geopolitical calculations and interests. Not luck. It is the product of constant, day after day. And that restraint is great at any moment. supply chains, and complex transport. All the lines straight narrower. It is one of the greatest contradictions of our time. Every morning, Forma's awakened, quiet, unseen, yet indispensable. As long as the world is whale and constant, active, grateful, crossroads, a narrow 33-kilometer strip of water, all on the map, and carrying the weight of the entire system. Sunrise, Persian Gulf looks nothing. The surface is calm, silent, endless. But beneath that still water, hundreds of meters of sediment and ancient rock, lies something that has shaped modern humans more than a century. Previous more than 3.8 million. Never been fully mapped or drilled by. Remains one of the least and potentially one of the richest. In these shallow waters, oil has covered and fractured for the Middle East first oil wells lie just shallow, accessible, easy to reach. A big resource. Now moving farther. Boundary thousands outward watching. Color shift. One side lies the Gulf, board and other lies the deep ocean, where the fields night, ocean guard, or terror. No aircraft, no satellite. What lies in all that is exactly why the oceans happen silent, often under the cover of darkness. June to September, southwest waves reach up to 5 meters. Visibility drops to 0. And underwater currents. The expedition. Every calm day. Sunlight. Colors silhouette. Lights. And then you go deep. Everything changes. Light fades. Colors. And at a few hundred feet, it becomes a world not survived with machines. This is what oceanographers call the twilight zone, where the last traces of life is. Below lies only darkness, pressure, and absolute silence. And in a place untouched by sunlight, thousands of water, ancient hydrocarbon deposits, seismic vessel mapping what lies beneath. Air guns fire powerful bolts. Water, mud, rock. Tornado. Thousands. These streets, 12 kilometers, longer than Everest, Mount Everest. Carry thousands of ultrasonics, detecting vibrations far beyond vision. People, data, information, gigabytes. More than an entire national library. Every 20 seconds, air guns fire. Pressure winds traveling 1,500. When they hit boundaries between rockways, part of the system. From this, scientists reconstruct a treatment. Semi-submersible rigs operate in waters up to 2,000 feet. Platform, filling column kilometers long, lowered when water is. It is one of the most complex springs ever built by oil. ROV, dry and immense ocean, weighing several tons and protected. Excellent. Fiber optic. Data and image. Seconds. Almost no delay. Workday, ocean pressure. Operator control robotic arms. 1 liter core sample, full answer. FBS processing, board, and offload oil entirely. Handle hundreds of thousands. Trusted waters. Platform. Each kilometer of these pipelines costs these lines stretch hundreds of kilometers, making wells each shore. Carry them complex skyscrapers underwater. On every vessel, oil company. Some are rich, operating quietly, data center. It is precisely in data. Create a formula, narrow stretch of water estimate, kilometers wide and every day around 21 million oil tanks. Tankers, organized lanes, highways, carrying fuels. Not just a shipping route, it is artery. A VLCC, very large crude carrier, transport up of oil journey. Stretching over 300,000 ship slowly entry. Its inertia requires up to 8 torques. Every day, hundreds of giant pounds of energy. It is no coincidence the world's most powerful navy. Every oil offshore platforms in polar zones. Natural gas increased alongside oil that burned due to lack of space, these flames glow like artificial stars. Each one is a clear signal. Oil is being extracted below. In deep waters, such flames have disappeared. That may soon change. On maps, maritime borders, straight lines. Reality, they are invisible. Water does not recognize pollution. Fish do not carry past them. But when oil lies beneath disputed zones, those invisible lines become boundaries. Suddenly, they matter again. This is a common theme in deep water. Survey vessel enters the distant zone, and is completely no weapons, no collision. Just a clear message. Data beneath the bed, content shared. From the deck of a drilling vessel, there is no land in sight. Only endless water and light. Beneath the ship, the drill, thousands of searching for something that could reshape entirely, or perhaps nothing at all. One of the busiest maritime hundreds of vessels, and if the 15th oil field turns south, the number will rise. More opportunities, but also more. The radius during storm season is one of the harshest environments for engines. Waves rise in heights, winds exceed 100 kilometers per hour, and underwater currents shift unpredictably. These forces destroy any structure not built for collision. It is one of the reasons why these deep waters are largely open ocean, every vessel is connected. Sometimes there are ships that choose not to. No clear flag, no AIS signal. Arctic, hearing, global tracking. Most notably, these gas pumps curve. AIS tracking underneath every ship on it. But they are not perfect. Those who understand the system know exactly where vast stretch of ocean with no signal, no traces, is one of the world's most critical areas. And that is no coincidence. Night, satellites reveal Persian Gulf glows with hundreds of lights offshore platforms. But beyond it, the Arabian Sea bathes in dark. No light, no recorded activity. But in the world of energy, silence rarely means absence. It often means concealment. Beneath the surface, another world operates. Military submarines silently, collecting data, tracking signals, listening to every move. In the deep energy, geological intelligence, valuable as military. And nations are willing to go to great lengths. Defog hides everything, much like the world of deep oil. Ships, money, power is all there. But no one sees the full picture. Each side sees only a fragment, or only what they are allowed to see.
that reshape entirely. From the Arabian Desert, massive sandstorms hundreds of kilometers out to sea, racing entirely. Surface operations come to a halt. Thousands of meters below, there is no storm, no wind. What lies beneath remains untouched by decay. And there for millions, waiting. Sunset, offshore rigs appear almost beautiful, like silhouettes against the burning sky. Beneath that beauty lies a different reality. These machines drill deep into the earth, extracting resources from millions of years. Every barrel brought to the surface has. Above the ocean, surveillance aircraft monitor every vessel, every platform, every anomaly reported. Data is analyzed, stored. In this world, almost nothing remains truly hidden, except for one thing, what lies deep beneath. From above, the Arabian Sea at dawn appears untouched. A flawless mirror reflecting a pale pink sky. Yet beneath its calm surface lie billions of tons of hydrocarbons, resting for hundreds of billions of years. The question has never been whether they but who will claim them, and at what cost. He knows nothing of oil, nothing of money or power. It simply does what it has always done, moving, floating, shaping. And when humanity is gone, the ocean will erase every trace. The only question is, before that happens, how much will every oil platform has an end. And the reserves run dry, massive steel structures cut apart and moved. Cost can reach billions of dollars. But what has been extracted never moved. On the seabed, only traces remain. Steel memories of what once. Out at sea, are moments from all boundaries. Water and sky merge into the horizon. Somewhere beneath that line, answers remain. Not in maps, not in political, but within the silent layers of sediment far below. At sunset, the Arabian Sea becomes a breathtaking light. Beautiful enough, one forgets what lies beneath. But as the light fades, darkness is over. And in the depths where sunlight never reaches, secrets remain untouched, waiting for those bold enough to open them. Night falls, and the ocean returns to its true nature, dark, deep, and endless. What lies beneath is not distant. It only becomes quieter, more patient. The story of oil is not over. It is simply shifting. Desert, ocean depth. Seabed not yet told its full story.
This is the darkest place on our planet. Not outer space, not a cave, not the depths of a forest. It lies directly beneath your feet, 11 kilometers below the ocean surface. Sunlight can only penetrate the below that lies the twilight zone, then the midnight zone, finally absolute. Ballinger Deep is increasing. No ray of sunlight has ever. If Mount Everest were placed inside the Mariana Trench, its peak would still sit 2 kilometers under water. This is the lowest point on Earth's surface. For centuries, humanity knew almost nothing about it. More people have walked on the moon and have visited the deepest ocean. Danger Deep is more remote than the International Space Station. And what scientists discovered there could change how we understand life. Discovered life here. Organisms barely surviving. But entire ecosystems thriving and stranger than anything imagined on distant planets. This is the story of Earth's deepest abyss and its final rescue. The Mariana Trench lies in the western Pacific Ocean. 300 kilometers from the island of Guam. It stretches for 2,550 kilometers. Longer than the width of the United States. But its true fame comes from unimaginable depth. Earth's surface is divided into massive tectonic plates that constantly. Here, the older and heavier Pacific plate dives beneath the smaller Mariana plate. Bring the ocean crust apart and forming this scar on the moon. What makes the Mariana Trench so deep is the age of the ocean crust. 17 million years. Dating back to the age of dinosaurs. The crust is colder, denser, and sinks deep into the planet. 100 meters lies the sunlight zone. Dolphins, sharks, and coral reefs. Below 1,000 begins the midnight zone. Darkness, crushing full dominating. Beyond 1,000 lies the Hadal zone. Strange world where pressure reshapes the rules of life itself. Temperature at Challenger Deep is more than 1,000 times stronger than at sea level. It's like placing 50 Boeing 747 airplanes on an area the size of your fingertip. Any object not specially reinforced would be crushed instantly. Temperatures at the bottom range 1 and 4 degrees Celsius. Nearly anything. No sunlight reaches them, and no warm ocean currents can penetrate it. This is the coldest, darkest, and you sit inside a single sphere smaller than a refrigerator. men prepared to attempt something no one had ever done before. U.S. Navy Lieutenant Don Walsh and Swiss engineer Jacques Piccard to descend to the deep point on Earth. The Trieste was unlike any submarine ever built. At a massive tank holding 85,000 liters of gasoline buoyancy. Below hung a steel sphere 12 centimeters thick, barely 2 meters wide. Cameras, no robotic arms, no rescues. 2 men and a mission. The descent lasted 4 hours and 47 minutes in total darkness. Walsh and Piccard could see nothing, only hearing the water, each other's breathing, and the creaking metal. Then, at 9,000 meters, a terrifying bang echoed through the hull. A plexiglass window on the outside had cracked, making fire. Walsh and Piccard faced a choice: ascend immediately or continue. They looked at each other and made their decision to keep going. p.m., Trieste touched the bottom of Challenger at a depth of 10,900 meters. The temperature inside the cabin had dropped to just Celsius. Exhausted and shivering, they had only 20 minutes before beginning the ascent. Reported catfish about 30 centimeters long gliding slowly across the sediment. Then a small shrimp appeared. Perfectly ordinary life at the very bottom of the abyss. Challenger Deep was empty. Nothing living there. After that historic dive, no one returned to Challenger Deep for more than 50 years. The Trieste carried no cameras and collected no samples. New eyewitness accounts were the only evidence. The U.S. Navy abandoned the effort. Cost was enormous. Scientific return seemed too small. Scientists shifted to using remotely operated vehicles, ROVs. These machines could send back images and samples. They lacked the flexibility of human exploration. The Mariana Trench remained largely forgotten until a Hollywood director entered the story. On March 26, 2012, filmmaker James Cameron climbed inside the submersible Deep Sea Challenger. The director of Titanic and Avatar was about to descend alone to the deepest point on Earth. This time, there were cameras, scientific instruments, and tools to truly study the abyss. captured microbial mats thriving in photosynthesis, life that survives without sunlight. In May 2019, American explorer Victor Vescovo reached a record depth of 10,927 meters. But he did not stop after one dive. Vescovo returned repeatedly, allowing humans for the first time to systematically explore this part of the ocean. Vescovo's team discovered rocks coated in yellow and orange minerals, evidence of deep geological activity. They also identified 4 new species of amphipods, shrimp-like creatures, perfectly adapted to the crushing pressure of the abyss. Then, Bobo saw something no one wanted to find. Earth. Resting on the floor of Challenger, nearly 11 kilometers from the surface, plastic bag and candy wrappers. Later described it as a moment, higher ecstasy. Scientists brought the captured DE creatures back to the laboratory to analyze their tissues. The results were shocking. Nearly every animal examined contained microplastics. Plastic from the surface had sunk 11 kilometers down, and the creatures here are consuming it. This discovery shocked the scientific community. No part of the ocean, no matter how deep or remote, remains untouched by human activity. The Mariana Trench is not only the deepest place on Earth, it has also become a mirror reflecting humanity's impact on the planet. The Mariana snailfish is the deepest living fish ever recorded, surviving at depths beyond 8,000 meters. Its body is almost transparent, lacking a swim bladder and built mostly from soft cartilage. It represents the absolute limit of vertebrate life on Earth. Giant amphipods, relatives of shrimp, can grow up to 18 centimeters in the Mariana Trench. Scientists discovered they reinforce their exoskeleton with aluminum, something no other known animal does. They extract the metal directly from deep sea sediment. The Dumbo octopus, named for its ear-like fins, is one of the deepest living octopus species known. Unlike shallow water octopus, it lacks an apex. These depths, predators are rare, so elaborate defense mechanisms are unnecessary. Biophores, largest single-celled organisms ever discovered. Cell can grow to the size of a tennis ball. Spread across the ocean floor like flowers, they challenge many biological assumptions about the limits of life. August and November 2021, China's Fandausha submersible completed 33 dives in the Mariana Trench. Scientists collected more than hundreds of sediment samples and discovered over 7,000 microbial species, nearly 89% of them previously unknown to science. Thousands of tube worms, giant clams formed dense colonies on the trench floor, resembling an underwater forest. These organisms survive through chemosynthesis, using chemical energy from the Earth's crust instead of sunlight. It is the deepest chemosynthetic ecosystem ever discovered. The Mariana Trench was something extraordinary. Life does not require sunlight, comfortable temperatures, or the conditions we once believed were essential. But it also else, no place on Earth, on the beach. Even 11 kilometers from the ocean's surface, our presence is found. The darkest place on our planet, waiting to be explored. The only question is this: when we return, will we bring science or more religion?
central command. Each fish reacts only to its nearest neighbor, and from simple decisions emerges a collective intelligence powerful enough to deceive sharks and tuna
others in the pod multiply. They remember companions after years apart. They teach their young hunting techniques through demonstration. The Atlantic holds minds like these, right at the surface, right before our eyes. German Boreaceus, leatherback turtle, largest living reptile, weighing up to 900. They dive deeper than snow, bathing on the field. This species has existed for on, surviving the extinction of wiped out the dinosaurs. And now, he's the us. Cyanea capillata, the lion's mane jellyfish, one of the longest animals ever recorded, its tentacles stretching up to 37 meters, longer than a blue whale. No brain, no heart, no blood, a body made of 95% water. And yet, it hunts, reproduces, and has existed 500 million, long before fish first appeared on Earth. The Sargasso Sea is on Earth without a shoreline. Its boundaries defined by 4 surrounding currents. The floating knots of golden sargassum form an ecosystem. Hundreds of species cling to it, hide within it, feed upon one another, entirely dependent on this drifting forest. It is also where European eels travel over 1,000 kilometers to spawn and then die. Sunlight officially ends here. Above is the world you know. Below, the world humanity has just begun to. More than 80% of the ocean floor has never been directly observed. What we are about to enter, much of it, being told for the first time. Let's keep descending. The mesopelagic layer, known as the twilight zone, stretches from 200 to 1,000 years. This is the realm of the perpetual sun. Day and night lose their meaning, and light leaves memory from above. Few people realize this is one of the largest animal biomass on the planet, more than all surface fish combined. Yet, we know almost nothing about it. Like Tophody, lanternfish. These tiny fish, only a few centimeters long, may be the most abundant fish on Earth by total biomass. Each night, they rise to the surface to morning, they descend into darkness to avoid predators. This vertical journey every 24 hours, the largest migration on the Earth. Almost no one knows it exists. A siphonophore is not a single organism, but a colony. Thousands of tiny called zooids linked together, which evolved to specialize in its task: hunting, digestion, reproduction, propulsion. None can survive alone. It represents one of the blurred boundaries, individual and collective, in the natural world, and some species grow up to long. Vampiroteuthis infernales, the vampire squid from hell, a scientific name that lives up to its name. Neither true octopus nor true squid. It is the last surviving member of the ancient evolutionary lineage. When threatened, it turns itself inside out like a cloak, exposing sharp spines, and releases not black ink, but clouds of bioluminescent light, turning darkness into illumination. signals have yet to decode. They hunt cooperatively, coordinating attacks without sound. Light, language, written on skin, read by sight. Total.
Rhedolecus lesne, the oarfish. Reaching up to 11 meters, it is the longest bony fish on Earth. For centuries, oarfish appearing near shore were believed to signal earthquake tsunamis, not entirely without basis, as they inhabit tectonic fault zones. They were never filmed alive in their natural habitat until 2001. Before that, we only knew them from bodies washed ashore.
Marine? No. The remains, phytoplankton, animal waste, mineral shells of microorganisms, all found in tiny particles, all contain surface. It is the eye for life below the light zone. But marine snow is also a carbon pathway, carrying atmospheric CO2 to the ocean floor. Atlantic, absorbing humanity's carbon and burying it thousands of years, every second, every day.
Isurus oxyrhynchus, the short-fin mako shark, the fastest shark in the ocean, reaching 70 kilometers per hour and leaping up to 6 meters above the surface. Like the bluefin tuna, makos are warm-blooded, maintaining elevated body temperatures to maximize muscle and brain performance while hunting. They can detect prey movement through electroreceptors across their snouts.
They had some ordinary event was the ocean. Billion organisms, anchovies, shrimp, all squid, copepods, rise from the depths. Then descend before dawn. This vertical migration, vast and carbon, this water ocean. One of the important mechanisms regulating climate and thermal. And it.
Copepods, smaller than a grain of rice, may be the most numerous animals on Earth. Trillions are drifting in the Atlantic right now. They are the central link in the entire marine food web, feeding on phytoplankton, eaten by small fish, and ultimately sustaining whales. If copepods disappeared, the ocean ecosystem would collapse within weeks. Argentine ducks, giant squid, growing up to 15 feet long, largest eyes in the algae. Five, eyes of encrypting, trying to capture them, photons in the darkness. For centuries in legend, Viking Kraken, monster. Not until 2004 were they photographed alive in their natural habitat. Much about them remains unknown. During World War II, the U.S. Navy discovered something strange. Sonar repeatedly misread the ocean. They called it a false bottom. Later, scientists realized it was the scattering layer, a dense concentration of organisms reflecting sound waves like solid ground. Billions of creatures gathered at the edge of light, forming a biological layer so thick, sonar mistook it for rock, or had accidentally uncovered one of the greatest ecological phenomena of the ocean. Meters. Sunlight does not exist here. Not a single photon from the sun reaches this layer. Temperature, 4 degrees Celsius. Pressure, 100 atmospheres, 100 times surface pressure. This is the bathypelagic zone, the realm of true darkness, stretching from 1,000 to
4,000 meters, and it holds more mysteries than everything we have discovered above. Melanocetus johnsoni, the black angler. The female carries a biological lure on her head, its tip filled with bioluminescent bacteria, the only trap she needs. Prey approaches out of curiosity or mistake and disappears into elastic jaws capable of swallowing something twice her size. Her stomach can expand almost endlessly. In this darkness, you never know when the next meal will come. Male anglerfish are up to 6 times smaller than females. When he encounters a female, he bites into her skin and begins to fuse. Circulatory, nervous, and digestive systems gradually connecting or dissolving. Eventually, the male is no longer an independent individual. He becomes an appendage to the female, existing only to provide sperm. This is one of the most extreme forms of biological integration in nature. Dragonfish possess a weapon no prey here is prepared for: infrared light. Most sea creatures cannot see infrared because evolution never created sensors opposite their environment. Dragonfish use it as a small flashlight, illuminating prey without the prey knowing it is kept. Truly see in the darkness while everything around them remains. Macropena microstoma.